I discovered my son had been stealing from my business for years, so I let him steal enough to go to prison. Running a family business always felt like the American dream to me, something I could pass down through generations like my grandfather did with his small manufacturing company. The smell of metal shavings and the hum of machinery became my daily soundtrack for over 20 years, building something from nothing in a cramped warehouse on the outskirts of town. My son grew up around those machines, learning to walk between conveyor belts and falling asleep to the rhythm of production lines during late nights when I had to stay to finish orders. When he turned 18, bringing him into the business seemed natural, almost inevitable. He showed interest in the technical side, asked good questions about operations, and seemed genuinely excited about taking on more responsibility. Those first few months working together felt like everything was falling into place, watching him learn the ropes and seeing glimpses of the leader I hoped he would become. The kid had a natural talent for understanding complex systems and could troubleshoot problems that stumped workers with decades of experience. But something started feeling off around his second year with the company. Small discrepancies in our inventory reports began appearing, nothing major at first, just slight variations that could easily be explained by human error or miscounting. The book showed we should have more raw materials than what appeared on the warehouse floor, and finished products seemed to disappear faster than our sales records indicated. I chalked it up to growing pains, maybe some inefficiency in our tracking systems that needed updating. The red flags became harder to ignore when I noticed expensive equipment going missing from the shop floor. Tools that cost hundreds of dollars each were vanishing without explanation, and when I asked the crew about it, everyone seemed genuinely confused about their whereabouts. Security cameras showed normal activity during business hours, but something about the timing of these disappearances nagged at me. They always seemed to happen during shifts when my son was working alone or with minimal supervision. My stomach dropped the day I found receipts in his car for items that perfectly matched the descriptions of our missing inventory. He had been selling our own products and materials to competitors and scrap dealers, pocketing the cash while I absorbed the losses. The betrayal cut deeper than any business setback I had ever experienced, watching someone I trusted completely exploit that trust for personal gain. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, but something held me back, maybe hoping I was wrong or that there was some explanation I was missing. Instead of confronting him, I decided to dig deeper and see exactly how extensive this theft had become. What I discovered over the following weeks made my blood run cold. Bank records showed he had been systematically stealing from us for over 3 years, not just materials and tools, but also manipulating our billing system to redirect payments from certain clients into accounts he controlled. The total amount exceeded six figures, money that should have gone toward expanding the business, upgrading equipment, and securing our financial future. The most devastating part was realizing how calculated and deliberate his actions had been. He had studied our systems, identified weaknesses, and exploited them with surgical precision. This was not some impulsive mistake or momentary lapse in judgment, but a carefully orchestrated scheme that had been slowly bleeding our company dry. Every conversation we had about business growth and future plans felt like a cruel joke, knowing he was actively working to undermine everything we were trying to build. My initial instinct was to cut him off completely, fire him, and try to recover what we could through legal channels. But then a different plan started forming in my mind, one that felt both risky and necessary. If I confronted him with what I knew, he might find ways to cover his tracks or claim it was all a misunderstanding. The evidence I had was strong, but proving systematic theft in court could be complicated and expensive, with no guarantee of recovering our losses. So I made a decision that kept me awake at night, but felt like the only way to ensure real consequences for his actions. I started documenting everything meticulously, creating an ironclad paper trail of his theft while simultaneously making it easier for him to steal larger amounts. I adjusted our inventory tracking to be less precise, left expensive items in more accessible locations, and even created opportunities for him to access company accounts with higher balances. The psychological toll of watching my own son systematically rob us while pretending to be a loyal employee was almost unbearable. Every morning I had to put on a normal face, discuss business operations with him, and act like everything was fine while knowing he was planning his next theft. The weight of that deception, even though I was the one being wronged, made me question whether I was handling the situation correctly or if I was losing my moral compass in pursuit of justice. But the plan worked exactly as I hoped it would. Over the next 6 months, his theft escalated dramatically, emboldened by what he perceived as lax oversight and easy opportunities. He began taking entire shipments of finished products, selling them to black market buyers, and pocketing tens of thousands of dollars at a time. The amounts he was stealing grew so large that they crossed into felony territory, the kind of theft that carries serious prison time rather than just fines or probation. I had been working closely with a private investigator during this period, someone who specialized in corporate theft cases and knew exactly how to document evidence that would hold up in court. Every transaction, every missing item, every forged document was photographed, recorded, and verified through multiple sources. We built a case so comprehensive that no defense attorney would be able to claim it was accidental or argue for reduced charges. The day I finally called the police, I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak that I had never experienced before. Relief that the nightmare of watching him steal from us was over, but heartbreak that it had come to this point, that my own son had forced me to choose between family loyalty and protecting our business and employees. The officers who came to make the arrest were professional and respectful, but I could see the confusion in their eyes when they realized they were arresting the owner's son. His reaction when they put him in handcuffs was something I will never forget. The shock and betrayal in his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was the one who had committed some unforgivable crime. He shouted accusations about how I had set him up, how I had trapped him, but never once did he acknowledge or apologize for the years of theft that had brought us to this point. That moment crystallized for me that he truly did not understand the gravity of what he had done or feel any genuine remorse for his actions. The legal proceedings that followed were lengthy and emotionally draining, involving multiple court appearances, depositions, and meetings with prosecutors. The evidence we had compiled was overwhelming, leaving little room for his defense team to argue for innocence or claim the theft was unintentional. The judge seemed particularly troubled by the systematic nature of his crimes and the fact that he had been stealing from his own family's business while maintaining a facade of loyalty and dedication. When the sentence was handed down, he received 4 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 2.5 years. The judge also ordered restitution for the full amount he had stolen, though realistically I knew we would never recover most of that money. Watching him being led away in shackles was one of the most painful experiences of my life, but also brought a sense of closure that I had not expected. The aftermath of his imprisonment created a complex web of emotions and practical challenges that I had not fully anticipated. Family members who did not know the full extent of his crimes initially blamed me for being too harsh, for choosing business over family loyalty. Explaining the systematic nature of his theft and the amounts involved helped some of them understand my decision, but others remained convinced that I should have handled it differently, perhaps giving him a chance to make amends privately. Our business relationship with certain clients became strained when news of the theft became public, as some questioned whether we had adequate security measures in place to prevent future incidents. I had to invest significant time and resources into rebuilding trust, implementing new oversight procedures, and demonstrating that we had learned from this experience. The financial impact of his theft, combined with the costs of legal proceedings and business improvements, set our expansion plans back by several years. But there were also unexpected positive outcomes from this difficult period. Employees who had suspected something was wrong but were afraid to speak up came forward with information that helped us identify other vulnerabilities in our systems. The incident forced us to modernize our inventory tracking, implement better financial controls, and create a more transparent operational structure that actually made the business more efficient and profitable in the long run. The most surprising development came about 18 months after his sentencing, when I received a letter from him in prison. Not the angry, accusatory messages I had expected, but a genuine apology that acknowledged the full scope of his crimes and the impact they had on our family and business. He had apparently been participating in programs focused on accountability and making amends, working with counselors who helped him understand the deeper issues that had led to his criminal behavior. In that letter, he revealed that his theft had started as a way to fund a gambling addiction that had spiraled out of control, something he had hidden from everyone, including his closest friends. The systematic nature of his crimes was not just greed, but a desperate attempt to cover mounting debts and avoid the consequences of his addiction. This explanation did not excuse his actions, but it provided context that helped me understand how someone I thought I knew so well could have deceived me so completely. Reading his letter brought up emotions I had been suppressing for months, grief for the relationship we had lost and the future we had planned together. But it also opened the door to a conversation about accountability, consequences, and the possibility of rebuilding trust after such a profound betrayal. His acknowledgement that prison was a direct result of his own choices, rather than some trap I had set, felt like an important step toward taking responsibility for his actions. The decision to allow him to continue stealing until he crossed into felony territory still weighs on me, raising questions about whether I acted out of justice or revenge. Some nights I wonder if there was a better way to handle the situation, if I could have confronted him earlier and somehow prevented the worst outcomes. But then I remember the systematic nature of his crimes, the calculated way he had been stealing from us for years, and I feel confident that serious consequences were necessary to break that pattern. Our business has recovered and even thrived in the years since his imprisonment, growing beyond what we had originally planned and establishing relationships with new clients who appreciate our commitment to integrity and accountability. The employees who remained with us through that difficult period have become incredibly loyal, understanding that we are willing to make hard decisions to protect the company and their jobs. The systems we put in place to prevent future theft have made us more efficient and profitable than we ever were before. As his release date approaches, I find myself thinking about what kind of relationship, if any, we might be able to rebuild. His letters from prison have shown genuine growth and self-reflection, acknowledging not just the crimes he committed, but the deeper character flaws that enabled them. Whether that growth will translate into real change once he is released remains to be seen, but I am cautiously optimistic that prison may have provided the wake-up call he needed to address his underlying issues. The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to allow them to face the full consequences of their actions, even when those consequences are severe and painful. Enabling his theft by looking the other way or handling it privately might have felt like the compassionate choice, but it would have prevented him from hitting the rock bottom necessary to recognize the need for real change. Watching him go to prison was heartbreaking, but it was also the only way to ensure that he understood the seriousness of what he had done. Looking back, I realized that my decision to let him steal enough to guarantee serious prison time was not just about protecting our business or seeking justice for his crimes. It was about forcing him to confront the reality of his choices in a way that could not be minimized, explained away, or forgotten. Sometimes the people we love most need to experience consequences that feel harsh in the moment, but ultimately serve their long-term growth and development as human beings.